Let's just jump right in. Think about this for a second. The very act of you watching this, of your eyes scanning these words, is using circuits in your brain that took thousands of years to build. It's pretty amazing because, as we're about to see, reading is one of the most incredible and surprisingly unnatural things your brain has ever learned to do. So, I want to start with a question that gets at a really common assumption. We all think of speaking as something that just happens, right? It's natural. So reading, which is just language on a page, that must be natural too, shouldn't it?
Nope, not even close. From an evolutionary point of view, it's a brand new, cutting-edge invention.
That's right. You see, our brains come with the wiring for seeing, for hearing, for speaking, all pre-installed. But reading? There's no built-in program for that. Evolution just never had the time to create a dedicated reading center. So we had to get creative. We had to invent it ourselves. And this is the key to the whole thing. The reading brain isn't one specific spot. It's a network. To learn how to read, your brain has to pull off this amazing feat of self-renovation. It actually hacks into parts that were originally meant for other things, like recognizing faces or processing sounds, and it rewires them all together to create this new, super powerful circuit. So how in the world did this happen? How did our brains figure out how to do this incredible new trick? Well, it all started with a blueprint that we humans created for it. For thousands of years, humans have been working on this code. You know, from these ancient wedge-shaped marks the Sumerians used to the incredible hieroglyphics in Egypt. All of these symbols were like an external software update that our internal hardware, our brain, had to learn how to run. And here's how that software runs. It's just brilliant. When you look at a word, your visual cortex sees it as a bunch of shapes. Then, that signal zips over to an auditory area that connects those shapes to their sounds. And finally, your language centers grab those sounds, stitch them together, and poof, you have meaning. It's not one part of the brain working, it's a full-on symphony with all four lobes playing in perfect harmony. Okay, but this is where the story gets really wild. This whole process, it doesn't just use your brain, it fundamentally changes your brain. Learning this one skill unlocks some incredible, almost neurological superpowers. Let me repeat that because it's so important. Reading physically alters your brain. It's not just a mental workout, it's an act of neurological renovation. And what's absolutely fascinating is that the type of language you read actually determines the blueprint for that renovation. So check this out. There's a huge difference here. A language like English is alphabetic. We link a few letters together to make a sound. But a language like Chinese is logographic. A single complex symbol is linked directly to a whole idea. This means they use different brain circuits. Reading Chinese, for instance, demands a lot more heavy lifting from the parts of your brain that handle visual memory. And if you want stunning proof, listen to this story. Scientists studied a man who spoke both English and Chinese. He had a stroke that damaged the visual memory parts of his brain. And a result? He completely lost his ability to read the complex Chinese characters. But his ability to read English? It was perfectly fine. It's just a perfect real-world example of how different writing systems literally build different roads in your brain. And the rewiring doesn't stop with logic. It rewires our feelings, too. You know when you're reading a book and the character gets a pit in their stomach and you feel it too? That's not a metaphor. The anterior insula, the part of your brain that handles actual gut feelings, even nausea, is the exact same part that lights up for empathy. Reading physically connects us to the stories we're told. But this ancient, incredibly adaptable brain of ours is now facing a very, very modern challenge. The explosion of digital screens is forcing our reading circuits to adapt all over again. And, well, the results are kind of complicated. Think about it. When we read on a screen, we're not really reading in that deep, immersive way. We're skimming, we're scrolling, our focus is shattered by notifications and the temptation to click the next thing. This basically trains our brains for distraction, and it makes us much more likely to fall for misinformation because we're not slowing down to really think critically. And this isn't just a feeling we have, the data is starting to show real consequences. Research found a direct link in kids. At age 8, the more time they spent on screens, the worse their academic performance was down the road. We are, in a sense, trading deep understanding for shallow engagement. And this creates a kind of feedback loop, right? Our brain gets used to that constant rapid-fire stimulation, and it starts to crave it. And the result? The quiet, focused pace of the offline world, the very environment you need for deep reading, starts to feel Well, kind of boring. Now, I know this might sound a little bleak, but it's absolutely not the end of the story, because the very same adaptability that makes our brains vulnerable to distraction also makes them incredibly resilient. We have the power to strengthen those deep reading circuits again. Let's talk about how. The solution isn't to get rid of all our screens. It's about consciously making space for the opposite. The antidote is just to build a reading life, to intentionally carve out that quiet time for the immersive, focused attention that a good book demands.
So how do we actually do that? The advice is simple, but it's powerful. If you're a parent, show your kids that you love to read. Read to them. For all of us, it just means protecting our time and our space. Putting the phone away, finding a quiet corner, and letting our brains do what they were rewired to do best. Dive in deep.
And ultimately, this is about so much more than just a personal hobby. The power of deep reading is fundamental. When we read, we change our brains. And when we change our brains, we change who we are. That process, well, that process changes society, and it allows us to imagine and build bigger, more beautiful futures for everyone.
So that really leaves us with one final thought. We know that reading physically remakes our brain for the better. We know how to protect it from the constant noise of the digital world. So the only question left is the one you have to answer for yourself.